Now we're going to look at multiplying fractions. So when we're multiplying fractions, it's very simple compared to adding and subtracting. What we do is we simply multiply the top and we multiply the bottom. So if we're trying to find 2/3 times 1/4, we simply multiply across the top as 2 times 1 and across the bottom 3 times 4, and we get 2/12. Now we make sure we can, whether we can simplify or not, and we can. 2 goes into both of these things. 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. Our second example is going to look at a mixed numeral multiplication. Now again, you need to make sure you change it into an improper fraction first, otherwise you'll get yourself very confused. So we change them to an improper fraction. We do 3 times 3 is 9, 9 plus 1 is 10, so it becomes 10/3, multiplied by 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11, so it becomes 11/5. Now, one thing that you can do to make life easier with multiplying fractions is to look diagonally to see if there's something in common. So with the 10 and the 5, they have something in common. They both, 5 goes into both of them. So what we can do, is we can say how many times does 5 go into 5? Once, so we cross it out and write 1. And then how many times does 5 go into 10? It goes in twice. Now, across the top, we've got 2 times 11 over 3 times 1, which becomes 22/3, which then simplifies to 7 1/3, because 3 goes into 22 7 times, and we've got 1 left over. Now, if you missed the cross simplification and you just did it as 10 times 11 over 3 times 5, you would still get the same answer in the end, but you have bigger numbers to work with. So now we have to see how many times 15 goes into 110, or you can simplify it first. Okay, so we see how many times 15 goes into 110. Now 15 goes into 105 7 times, so we have 7 wholes and 5 left over, so it becomes 5/15, and then that then simplifies to 7 1/3, which is the same answer as we got with the cross simplification. So regardless of whether you miss it or not, you'll still get the same answer. Just by doing the diagonal cancellation, you make it easier on yourself at the end. Okay, so the important things to remember when we are doing multiplication of fractions: the first thing, you can check for cross simplification. The second, multiply numerators, then multiply your denominators, and simplify your answer if possible. And the other thing to remember is change mixed numerals to improper fractions before you start, otherwise you will definitely get yourself confused. Okay, so what we need to do next is division of fractions. So when we do division of fractions, it is fairly straightforward because it ends up being like multiplication. However, you just have to remember at the very start of the question to flip the second fraction upside down, and you change the sign to a times. So if we've got the example of 3/4 divided by 1/2, the first step is to flip the second fraction upside down. So we leave the first one as it is, we flip the second one upside down, and we need to change the divide sign to a times. After we've done that, we go, okay, can we cross multiply? Now these two things have something in common. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So if you could see that, you could do it, otherwise you could just do it as usual. So we get 3 times 1 is 3 over 2 times 1, which is 2, which of course becomes 1.5. Now, had you have not done the cross multiplication, you would have got 3 times 2 over 4 times 1, which gives you 6 over 4, which is also 1.5. Okay, the other type of question we might see is doing 3/8 divided by a whole number. Now, if you're dividing by a whole number, the first thing you should actually do is make the whole number a fraction. So we leave the first one as it is, we leave the divide sign where we are, and it becomes 5 over 1. Because if you divide anything by 1, it just becomes the same number that you started with. Now, we flip this fraction upside down. So we leave the first fraction as it is, second fraction becomes 1 over 5, and we remember to change the sign in the middle from a divide to a times. We then do normal multiplication. We check diagonally. 1 and 8 have nothing in common. 3 and 5 have nothing in common. So we just do 3 times 1, which is 3, over 8 times 5, which is 40. Can we simplify? No, we're just left with 3 over 40 as our final answer. Our final example for division of fractions is going to be a mixed numeral one. So 4.5 divided by 2 1/3. So the first thing again that we always do when we get a mixed numeral question, we change them to improper fractions. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so it becomes 9 over 2 divided by 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So we've got 9 over 2 divided by 7 over 3. We can now start our question. We flip this fraction upside down, so it becomes 9 over 2 and 3 over 7, and we change our division sign in the middle to become a times. We check to see diagonally if we can do anything. 3 and 2 have nothing in common. 9 and 7 have nothing in common. So we just multiply across the top. 9 times 3 is 27. And 2 times 7 is 14. So then we need to change it back to a mixed numeral. And we see how many times does 14 go into 27. That's once. And there's 13 left over. So it becomes 13 over 14. Just rewrite that for you. So we get 1 and 13 over 14 as our final answer. Okay, so the important things to remember when we're dividing fractions is that we flip the second fraction over first, then we change the sign from a division to a times, then we multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, and simplify if we can. Good luck.